Hey guys, we are working on some more stuff for the excavator. I showed you taking the bucket off. Let me show you what we're up to with it now. So, here's the bucket off my 215B excavator. It's pretty smoked. And I got some chunks of steel there. I got a box of pins. That's all induction hardened chrome plated rod for making new pins. There's a new cutting edge, tooth adapters, teeth. You can see the whole front. Corners missing, adapters are gone, big crack. Corners are smoked. I need new corners, new cutting edge. I tried ordering from Caterpillar. They said they had one corner for this bucket, but not the other. This is what they sent me. It's not right. That's just the wrong part. And it's vintage, so I can't return it. So that's great. But a buddy with a water jet cut out some 1¼ steel plate for me. And I got these lined up. So we're going to go in about like this. The new cutting edge will stick out the front, and the adapters will go on. So I started marking it out. I'm going to torch the sides and the bottom off the bucket. And, well, just the cutting edge bottom here. Back to this old weld seam. That's going away. And then I'm putting a new cutting edge and these corners in. And once those are all welded up, I've got 2 corner bit adapters, which, when you look at them, they're notched out, so these slip on like that, and then I can weld around them. And then for the center, I have regular adapters, which are not notched, which slide on and they weld them up. As you can see, this edge, pretty smoked. These were sitting about there, which is about right for the cutting edge. The new cutting edge here, I got from Caterpillar. It doesn't look very fresh. But they said it'd work. I wish it was an inch wider. See, the paint's real nice on it. There's some good crusty rust in there. These will sit about like this. They'll sit on there like that. And then corner adapters. Right, that's the wrong one. Nope, that's the right one. Slide on there. And this all welds up. The center adapters go right on. I'm hitting the pallet. Those go clunk, clunk, clunk. And then teeth slide on pin, and there's the new edge of the bucket. So a lot of torch work, and we're going to burn a lot of rod. I will show you on this bucket. If you look at the ears, they've been bent and repaired. They're tipped out. So I bought new pins. Here's one of the pins. And then we're going to line bore this. So if I stick it through the hole, it's pretty sloppy. The bushing's out on this side, and this one's half out. But if you look at the ends, we're going to have to remachine the end. It's tapered by about 1/4 inch on both sides. The inside's actually pretty parallel, so we'll end up line boring this pair of holes, face it off. I got brand new bushings for that. Make that back to factory. We'll put the proper ends back on the pins, which look sort of like these. When I took it out, you saw some of them were welded and had torch out. There's the bushing from the bucket still on the pin. This is a proper pin. It's got 3 holes in the end. And the other end has a cap on it. So I'm going to make the new pins like these. I'll probably see if I can water jet some new cups. And then back here, this link, if you look down, I think you can probably see it. That's pretty sloppy. So this is getting new bushings, new bushing, new bushing, new bushing, new pin. Same down here. Everything in this bucket linkage. These side links here. All new bushings, pins, all that. And then we're going to make a thumb that shares the main pin for the bucket. It comes down. I'm sure that'll be another video. So I'm going to set you up in the stand here, and you can watch me go to town on this thing and Hope you like it. Leave some comments, like, subscribe, comment, all that sort of good stuff, and let me know what you think. Oh, that's heavy. The new edge is a little better than the old edge. Got our edge tacked, just in 2 spots. These are cut, I just cleaned them up. Got my side plates, these are 1.25". I chamfered the 1 spot I need. Got them fit. We'll drive up into there. And try to keep everything square, but not much of this old bucket's actually square anymore. Same thing here. There's tricky cutting. There's multiple layers, and if you've ever used a torch, you know they don't cut too well when you get 2 or 3 layers you're trying to go through at once. It makes it a little tricky. Tappa. Just right. Making some progress here. Camera died. I got the corners in, the edge is on. I still need to flip it over and burn in the bottom. I got marked out here. We're going to throw our teeth on. Start with the adapters. And teeth will go on those. But you see, that's going to be a big difference. The edge is about here before. It's probably another foot. I think it measured out from 6 inches at the broken corner to this is going to be more like 22, 23 inches. So I'm just going to clean a little bit of rust off of here first. I'm going to burn some 6010 on there. Doesn't care about rust too much, but Might as well clean a little bit, and then we'll burn some 7018, fill it up. And then I got an eye we're going to cut out for the back of the bucket. I've wanted one for lifting, so I don't have to wrap a chain. And it'll be great for flipping this over. So I'll put the adapters on, we'll put an eye on the back, and we'll roll it over. We'll really weld up the bottom of these. I'll probably flip it on its side, because using gravity you can really put a nice fat bead, burn it nice and hot, and really weld edges of these in too. Alright, here's the progress. I got the top of the teeth welded. Came out pretty nice. There's about 10 pounds of rod in here. See, these are all filled up. This is all, I think there's 4 passes all the way around everything. So you have to root in, kind of fill it, and pass, pass, pass. Fills up nice. These are rooted in, but I'm going to go and really fill these up in a minute. This is all filled up. You can see we burned a few rods so far. Those are all 532, 7018. The next thing we're going to do, because welding on the top nice and flat, easy to keep it hot, you get a lot more rod, good penetration. It's just a good way to weld. So these are all rooted in, but the next thing I'm going to do is I got this rigged up to my crane. I'm going to take this dog bone off, and I've always wanted an eyelet. A lot of buckets have an eyelet here that you can either use with a chain or a clevis to pick stuff up. I don't have one, but we're going to fix that. It's I think it's 1.5" plate. I just gave it a quick tack, easy work surface. This is the profile of the back of the bucket. I was playing with a couple different lines. I used one of those little finger marker jigs to take the profile off of here, transfer it onto here, and then I left a good amount of meat and played with the clevis. It's not a huge one, but I figured this size would be good. That'll work nice on the bucket. Gives a little swing, enough room to get a chain hook through. So we're going to torch that out. There's a lot of work to bring them back. I'll probably put 50 pounds of rod into it, and I'll probably have the end of this job with the bushings in the pins. Bushings, pins. I'm gonna have $1,000 in materials on this. It is starting to rain, so I'm going to tuck you right in the edge of my shop here, and we'll see how much work I can do before I get fully rained out. Well, as you can see, we're rained out, but we got other stuff to do. In the meantime, I've got these links that came off. They need bushings in them. We can do that. This is actually kind of neat. You can see the bucket's hot enough from all that welding that the rain is steaming right off it. Look at it go. It's still dry around some of the teeth, just because it's so hot, you can't really get wet. But this is what happens when you try to work in November. Wet. Look at this gap. About ½ an inch of play in that pin. I'm taking a scientist to see how worn out that pin is. I don't think there are any bushings in the bucket anymore. Looks like the dog bone still has bushings. This might be worn through over here. Hopefully there's still a bushing in here. I'm not sure. I'll have to clean it up. This is the eyelet for the back of the bucket. I just did a quick tack weld for easy place to work. I'm not worried about a little ding in the side of the bucket where it's stuck. I'm going to torch that out, and that'll go right back here. So surprisingly, there actually were bushings still left in here. You can see they're pretty bad. I did a little mechanic trick called cutting the bushings. You can see there's a slice in them. I don't think I got this one all the way. But when you use the torch, look how smeared this bushing is. There's an interesting trait where when you have a gap between two pieces of metal, the torch doesn't just slice right through. You have to heat the next piece, so you can start cutting in the bushing and very carefully go whoop, whoop, whoop. And you can see your cut stop when it hits the new metal. And as long as you don't sit there and wait for it to keep cutting, you can cut just the bushing without cutting the boss. Like this one, I probably didn't need to cut it. It was halfway out, but it's just easier. When I finally got the last bit, it just went, just closed up a little bit. So now we can knock these out. And here's our new eye. That's going right here on the back of the bucket. I did just kind of burn that stuff off of there. When you have these mushed up bushings, you tend to have some really sharp edges, and they're a pain in the butt to clean. With a torch, I'm in a place where there's nothing to burn here. It's a metal bucket, so I'm not afraid of a fire. I was actually using the fire. It kind of burns it off and it falls off and ends up being pretty clean, so worked nice. Bushings this destroyed, most likely the hole is not still its original dimension. I'd be pretty psyched if I got away with not line boring this. I do the work, but it's my own stuff. If I don't have to, I don't. It's just time and money. Mostly time is what I don't have. I don't have a lot of money either, but yeah, these still have little machining marks in the back, so maybe, just maybe, fresh bushings will fit. Let me grab my bushings and see how they do. There's a whole crate of these. I think I bought like 30 bushings or something like that. There's a lot of them. We'll try to get a count later for this job. I think these are the right ones. There's two different styles. These particular ones are aftermarket. I think they were only like 12 or 15 bucks a piece. They were pretty cheap. Some of the other bushings for this machine, the Caterpillar, which were actually cheaper in the aftermarket. So of course I got Caterpillar on this. Never tried this as a driver, but I've got an idea. Might be really slick, might be stupid. We'll see. But the bushing's frozen, so it's small. The hole's hot, so it's large. Try to use a pin. Drive it straight. That actually worked really well. I'm throwing this pin out anyway, so I'm not too worried about dinging it. It's very worn, but all I wanted was the nice square shoulder to drive the bushing straight. I'll try to do that on the other side. You know, it's not a perfect fit, but I think it's pretty good. I'm going to run it. Yeah, that side's not as good. Yeah, this side's going to need to be line bored, so I'll pop that one out. I'll just do both of them. Yeah, do I even do both of them? Yeah, if I'm doing one, I'll do both. Alright guys, here we go. We are working on this bucket again. If you're wondering how big it is, that's a full-size garage door. So if I go level, it's pretty good size. This is up to my waist. You'll see in a minute. Anyway, the ears on this thing, these are pretty good. The bushings go in, they're a little bit egged. I'll probably do this set of holes just because why not. We added a ring on the back. I showed you doing that. That'll be really nice for picking stuff up. I think that's 1.5" steel I used. Up here you can see it looks like they're spread a little bit. This one, they welded a piece of metal, and when they bent it, they got it kind of crooked. The actual ear itself isn't as crooked as it looks. It's mostly that piece that was added on. Now, the actual bosses themselves, they're a little bit worn crooked, so I welded them up. It's not the most beautiful thing, but that's fine. We're going to machine it. I was actually just about out of mixed gas in the MIG, so I just got the stick welder and did this real quick. And we got our York line boring setup on here again. I used the cones to set it up all centered. It's all welded on, ready to go. We have a cutter in. Gonna start cutting this thing, and we'll have a real bucket here soon. seems a lot more worthwhile working on now. It's got a cutting edge and teeth on it. The floor is a little bit rough. It's the layers aren't in the best shape. Maybe next year if I can, or in the spring, if I can come up with a good chunk of hard ox or AR 400 wire plate, something like that, I'll cut the floor from here back to, you know, the back of the flat, something like that. This is a laminated bucket, but you can see a couple layers from both sides. The corners, I went and welded a bunch on. It's not the most pretty, but in the inside you can see a little bit right there. It was actually almost through. I started welding, it came right through. So I'm going to add a little more to that corner when I get this out of the shop. But for now, it's really darn cold and it's snowing out there, so we're cutting here just to show you how wallered out this thing is. So you can see, done a lot of cutting. I think I've got 4 passes in, just trying to get it. First thing I do is I get it all clean metal and round to weld on, so I don't have a bunch of rust and grease and junk in there. And when it's not round and you weld it, it still won't be round. So I get it round, then we weld it up. So I've taken off, well, you can see that's less than ½ an inch. This is 3/4, so I've probably taken off 1/4 inch of material all the way around. And it's still, that's still not cut in there. That's all beat up. I probably have to take another 1/8 inch off to get through there. So I'm gonna keep cutting till we get this nice, clean, and round. And then I don't have enough stroke, these ears are pretty far apart, to do them all at once. So then I'll set up the cutter and I'll cut this one rough. And then I'll bring you guys back. I'll set up the bore welder and we'll weld up both these holes to smaller than we need. Not by too much, but by enough that I can cut it back and get a perfectly clean inside with no gaps. And then we will come in and cut our faces on all of these, because you can see they're welded up. I mean, I had to build up 1/4 inch here. I think with the wobble of the bucket, it wore off the upper inside. This one not as bad, but this one pretty badly. This one, the bottom outside was worn. And same here. I think at some point these must have been, the bosses must have been replaced. I'm not sure quite what the history is, but I built up the faces. We'll cut them square. Then we'll press bushings in. And we'll make sure we have enough face on these. Once the bushing's in and they're squared up, if I don't have a lot of meat, I can weld a little bit and just touch it with the grinder and get it pretty good. And we'll get these 2 holes done. And these really aren't too bad. I actually pressed a bushing in here and took it back out. Just this front side here, it's a little bit worn just on the edges. There's a little more gap than I wanted. This one's worse than the other. Really could put a bushing in there and run it, but if I'm line boring, this is going to take 1, maybe 2 passes rough, 1 weld pass, and then usually a roughing pass and a finish pass. So it's a few hours, but it's a winter day. So it's all snowy and gross out, so I might as well do both of them, have it right. So I got the faces of these. See, I took a cutter and I cut a flat and I kind of touched up with the grinder around it. It's pretty hard on the cutter, so the rough weld. So I just do the inner part for this step. And I'm going to take my bore welder and I'm going to set it. And I'm going to weld a ring, reset it, weld a ring, reset it, weld a ring. And I'll actually build this face up evenly now that it's square. I'll build up a little bit here because the 2 ears, the gap's too big. I can use some shims, but while I square this up, I'm just going to add probably 1 layer weld. So look down through the end here. So this one, this is the bushing that's going in, and you can see that the it's not too bad a gap. That's maybe 2 passes of weld will give me enough to cut it back and have a nice press fit. This one, however, this ring's what my bore welder and line bore hook to. Was really oval. You can see how much, I mean that's, you fit a little finger in there. It's probably 3/4 of an inch, so that's probably going to be maybe 3-4 passes of weld, and then I'll machine it back down. And I'm going to do the same thing on the face here. I cut a flat on it, just till I touched what was left on the top. The bottom here is all built up. That was worn back severely. It's a little bit lumpy, but I'm going to take the bore welder and I'll run a couple passes on here, and then I'll cut that back to actually nice and flat, because when we're done, this is a Caterpillar spacer washer. These are what I'm using everywhere through here. See, it fits the same diameter as the original boss. So I want to make sure I build this boss up enough out here to get a full contact. On the inside, I'm going to probably need a few washers because it is pretty worn. But I'll be able to stack maybe 1 or 2 washers to get the spacing right so it's not full play. Same thing here. I want to have full contact area between the washer and the boss, and that way it'll wear more slowly. It'll be good. Ready to weld it up. Here's a bore welder. Welding the far side. This is the first pass in the bore. I did weld up around the outside of it. Came up pretty well. Let's get it going. I'll let it build a little bit further out than usual, but I do want to increase the pad, so I got it to build out at least 1/8 of an inch. So that's pretty good. Well, it's going to look exactly the same for the next couple passes. I'm going to bring it up. Now, let's see. I started off at 2.571 for diameter. That's 1 pass of weld. I'm at 3.386. So I took off 0.185. One more pass should probably get us where we are, where we need to be. So I'll get this welded up and we'll weld this one up and we'll come back in and show you what we're up to. So since I bought this line boring setup, I wanted to make this little measuring setup. I ended up buying it. It was, in my opinion, way overpriced, but part of that's just they're the only guys who make them. It's pretty much a piece of key stock with some different length stubs that thread into one end, and then a little set screw, and it's bored for a spring, so you've got a pop out so you can lock it in, and key stock's the right size. I'm gonna take that up. It slides through your bar, slide the bar in, pop it free, and then you can come out and measure it with your vernier or whatever you want, and you get accurate bore dimension. I was trying to do this with calipers, and you had to take the bar out to get a good measurement. You could get a rough estimate, but you really couldn't be accurate doing that. So I finally bit the bullet. Bought these because it was taking way too long pulling the bar out between cuts. All in all, this is a pretty expensive setup. I know it doesn't look very complicated, but if you're going to get into line boring, you better cough up at least $25,000 to start, and then you're still going to need parts and stuff, and it costs a lot to do. That's why we charge a lot for it. It's not because want to get rich. A lot of money in tooling adds up pretty quick, and You gotta do a lot of line boring to pay it off. Say that about it. So I hope you guys like watching this. Just one little, it's really just a, I don't know, it's like a plug that they cut the bottom out. So you can thread these in for a backstop. I leave them in some of the holes. Doesn't really matter, but I need to take it out to fit the gauge in. But you see that slides through the bar. And then feed the bar in. Make sure I got a clean surface. That should do it. And then I can release the spring. I rock it just a little, make sure I get good setting. Tighten it up. Pull it back out. See how close we were. So last cut I was 25 thou too small. So I bumped the cutter out by 11 thou, the thought that I'll go to 22. That gives me a little bit of wiggle room for error. I'd rather take a super light pass if I need to. If you overbore it, all of a sudden you're back to putting the bore welder on, welding it back up, and starting over, which you don't want to do that. So this is set the right width, so I can take my vernier, got brown and sharp, so I get good measurements. Right onto here. We're at 3.267. So we're just cutting the face. This is all hand feed. I gotta cut our way out. And this lets me cut a nice face perpendicular to the hole. So on this application, there's washers that go on the pin to space everything out. But I want a parallel surface, otherwise they're just going to wear in the one spot they hit. So I brought the cutter in and I squared up the face. This is all welded up. So we're changing some of the bushings out right now for this bucket and the linkage. And this old excavator takes these 6A 7099, they call them bearings, but they're just bushings, just about everywhere for the pins. So I made a couple tools on the lathe, put a 1-inch hole in the center so I can put my threaded rod in there for using the porta power. And I stuck a little step on this one, just a little bit, so it fits on the end. It's slightly undersized. This one is to push them out, old ones out of the bore. And then made this guy for pushing them in. It's got a double step, so it fits into the bushing, centers it up, and then it drives it in. It's got this next flat up here. That's what bottoms out. This step here is for the grease seal. So the grease seal is the same height, so that way this will push the bearing in just far enough so that when I take this off, I can then push the grease seal right on top of it. I'll probably flip it over, push them that way, or a lot of the time I'll even just tap these in with a hammer. They're easy enough to do, and that way you get your bearing with, a lot of them have the grease seals like that, or some of them, there's a space, another bearing, and grease seal. So I've got a piece of 1.25 plate. I've got a nice receiver tube here, some heavy wall pipe, which is a good diameter for this. And I can set the, it actually works out perfect. It's about the right size. So I can set this. And I know I've got the right, it's pretty centered up. It's almost the same diameter as this boss, so it's easy to line. And I'm going to drop my little pusher on here. For the press, it'd be nice not to have a hole, but I'm going to have to do a bunch of these in the field, so I'll just use a little block. unhappy bushing. Let's try to push the other way. Line it up. Throw a driver on there. Nice little block. Well, I might have to show you how to cut some out, because this one's very unhappy about leaving. This is where I'd love to have a 50 or 100 ton press. Well, I think the only one that was going to go is the one I did ahead of time. Alright, these didn't want to push out, so we're going to cut the bushings. It's just sitting on the ripper. I'm not doing anything with that right now. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the torch, I'm slicing just the bushing, not the housing. So once they're just slicing it, they release. A lot easier to get them out. Ta-da! So due to the difference in metal, you can cut through the bushing. These are pretty worn out without cutting into the housing. Pushing bushings in. These bushings are fresh out of the freezer. There's a little bit of retaining compound on them, and I got a driver I made, and this is just a driver for something else that's turned backwards just as a cap it off. And we're using the porta power with a hollow ram to push the bushings in. Oh, I could really use a bigger cylinder, but I don't have one. Wow, that just moved a lot. If you shock it just right, it moved almost a quarter inch. I think that went all the way. Fresh end, ready to go. Looks a little rough, but that'll service exactly the same as a brand new one. So, let's go do the other end. These are fresh out of my freezer. It's as cold as I can get it. I don't have liquid nitrogen or anything like that around here. Be nice, but I don't. And there's one side link rebushed. Got the dog bone, that needs to be done as well. And another one of these. And then there's 4 bushings in the bucket that we line board as well. Let me know what you think. So give me some comments, and if you're interested, if you like my projects, you want to follow along, if you hit the subscribe button, you'll get a notice every time I post another video. Make it easier to follow along, and it helps out the channel a little bit too. Next frozen bearing. This one's different. It's got grooves and holes for grease. Put the grease holes not directly in line with the existing grease hole. If you do, it'll push right through one hole and not spread around. If you offset it, it'll at least have to go around and go in at least 2 of the holes. Makes it a little better. Our porta power and cylinder. washers. Got an adapter plate on the bottom just to give me something to hook onto. Try to start it nice and straight. It's really nice to have an air-powered pump. I got one, but I got to rebuild it. I got it from a buddy because it was broken. I haven't had a chance to rebuild it. Although I did think about my hydraulic hose machine's got an air pump on it. If I put the right quick connection, I can use that too. Haven't got there. Now you can see the bushing driver's all the way down. I made this bushing driver for doing bushings with seals. So when I lift it up, you'll be able to see there's a step which set the depth of the bushing down in the hole. So the bushing is actually centered in here. It's below the surface. It should be right to put a seal on the top and a seal on the bottom. You see the driver. Bushing sits here, and that shelf there holds one of these seals. So now my bushing is below the surface enough I can get a seal in there. It's good to have a grease seal. It'll keep everything nice and clean. Keeps the grease in. Now we're going to put the seals in. These are designed for pin grease seals. They mostly keep junk out and they let extra grease pressure out as need be. And I'm going to see if I can stuff this on there. Drive them just a little bit deeper because I want to make sure that I don't want to be at the surface where they might catch a little wear. So that'll stick it right up against the bushing. Inside just a little bit, but the bushing's centered. That'll give a little clearance to not get all screwed up. So I'm going to go do that on all of these. This one you can see there's some wear in the edge. So by pushing the seal in, we'll actually get behind that. They're all seated down the bushings. I always love this part of a job when I start putting all the parts I've bought in. I feel like I really get some accomplishment. Just looking around the shop's getting cleaner. Boxes of parts are getting installed. They aren't not tripping over the boxes anymore. These bushings and seals have been sitting on my workbench, taking up space. So now they're going into where they belong. So this end of the dog bone's done. You wouldn't mistake it for a new part, but it's fully functional. It's back to not having slop in it. It's going to serve me well. If you really wanted to go nuts machining, you could weld these faces up and square them back. They're a little bit, these particular ones here, a little bit rounded over, but I got fresh bearings going between. It's going to be just fine. There shouldn't be lateral force on here now that all the bushings are straightened out. It should be nice and straight. So for the age of the machine, this will probably last the rest of its lifetime. If you stay on top of bushings, you can always change them out. So, time to go on the other end. Now this end does have a little wear, but once again, I'm going to run it as it is. Really got to draw the line somewhere. The bores are fine, so I'll put the bushings in there, and that'll take the slop out, and the fact that the seals are in, well, maybe an 1/8 inch. You can see, if you look at it, the wear is off center. It wears to there and to there. So this is about maybe 5/8 out the edge of the hole, and this side's 3/8, probably less than half. Here it's only maybe 1/4. So the pin was going like that because the bushings are so bad. Now with good bushings, shouldn't have to worry about that. So we're gonna go get the frozen bushings for this. There's one in this end, one in that end, one seal on either side, and a grease zerk. And this whole link will be done and ready to attach to the bucket. Here we go on the next bushing. I got it set up, frozen. Same bushing driver. Got a little smoky in here. That's the cool part. It's all it quits for the evening, but you can see that's all the smoke from bore welding. Gets kind of gross in there. But I open the door, and it's about 5 below 0 right now. The heat, but all my smoke goes out the door, so I'd rather not have it settle on everything and really feel the warmth coming out. We'll let a bunch of smoke out, then I'll close it up for the night. But these are all pressed in. Those are done. Wow, it's warm up here too. It's pretty warm up this far in the bucket. The whole bucket's quite warm. Pretty nice actually. But these are done. I just need to take the brackets off. These guys have been bored. Took 2 passes on each. They're both welded up, and I just need to take the bore welder off. And I'm going to take the grinder, and I'll just clean up the couple little bumps on the outside. Don't need to dang a cutter into those lumps. But I'll bore it back to size, face it, press bushings, done. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if there's anything you want to see, and I'll try to show it to you. So, slight improvement. Went and got a new spray bottle. My old coolant system not working too well. Got a fresh one. And we're doing our cuts here. So those 2, cut, bushings in, done. This one, same thing, I just cut it. But I'll show you cutting these. This one, I have taken a grinder with a sanding wheel on it, and I just cleaned up the face here. I used one of these. It's like a sandpaper disc. They're pretty nice for getting it flat because they don't really wear down the same way a grinding wheel does. They don't really pull the grinding dust out either. So I'm really starting to switch over. I like these a lot. Anyway, I took that and I just took the little knobs of weld that were sticking up from when the bore welder comes out. It'll start to sputter a little bit and you get a few little drips and knobs on the faces. I could go reface it, but hitting the chunks, there's a little bit of play in the system, which is just enough to suck it in, and it's hard when you have blocks to not break your cutters off. So since I'd already faced that, and then I welded it, so I knew I had a good reference, and it really wasn't that bad to start, I just took this and took the knobs off, so I've got a good face to start with. I'm not calling it a machine face, but it's not all lumpy. Inside's just welded, so we're gonna give it a first pass. This is set by eye pretty much, just to get it round, then we can take a measurement. We'll start cutting to dimension that way. So let's get it cutting. There's the cut. I'll show you how you measure them. I'll get the junk out of the hole. Got a little 3-bore snap gauge. When I look at this, usually I use mics on these. 3.07. Just rough ball. Final hole size should be 3.2544. So you can see I got a ways to go. This will be our second cut. I popped it out 40 thou, so should be a decent cut. Didn't sharpen between these two passes. Still looking halfway decent. Yeah, when I sped the feed rate up and gave some coolant, started getting these nice little springs. So we can get to focus. I can bring over Mr. Brown and Sharp there. So we are 3.1182. We'll do the math and figure out our next cuts. Okay, so did the math. If we wanted to finish this in one cut, it'd be 681. So 68.1 thou cranked in, which, because it's a, we're adjusting the radius, it's actually times 2 would get us the final. We're not going to do that whole cut. Probably run about 50. Might even run another 40. Let's see how our cutter looks when it pops out of the hole. Sometimes on these, if the cutter looks a little dull, I would dial this to 50, go sharpen. I usually lose about 9/10 or so if it's just a little shiny. I wouldn't mind a sharpen. I'll take the cutter out. I'm going to set this so I'm ready to go when I get back. The cutter, I'll dial this into 50. Obviously we're going to lose some length in the cutter, but we'll have a final cut anyway. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 thou. If you keep these sharp and you're not slamming into chunks, usually you don't have to take much off to get a nice edge back. Slide that in, back to the stop. We'll tighten our set screw, hold it in place. These bores welded really nice and they're nice and clean. If you have a bore that's got a few little funky spots, sometimes you gotta make sure you have, if you have a little void, you have to make sure you have good clean surface to measure off of. 3.2123. So I need to move this 21.05 thousandths. So I'm going to bump it to just a hair over 20. We'll cut it, measure it, because we can cut it 1,000th if we need. You can be fairly accurate with this, but you gotta really pay attention. That went a little bit quicker because we weren't taking as heavy a cut. It was actually a pretty fine cut, as you can see from the size of these. Pretty fine stuff, but kind of fine tuning it here so I can push the feed rate up. So I just did the math. Right now we're 1.6 thousandths tight. So that means we need to cut about 0.8 of a thousandth. I'm going to actually cut a little bit of this. When these are too tight, it crunches the bushings. Your pins don't fit. It's really lousy. We have just the slightest little bump, and this will be a pretty quick little finish cut. Part of the learning curve is you try to cut some or push a bushing in. It's a little too tight a hole. When you do that, you have a heck of a time getting the bushing in there, and then the pin doesn't fit. It's not a good time. So you kind of learn to cut it right. If you make it too big, you got to weld it and do it over. So this is a very fine cut. See how fine a cut that was. Very fine cut. Less than a thousandth. But if I didn't cut this, it would have been 4.6 thousandths interference fit on a bushing. It's 3 1/4, which general rule of thumb I've always worked off of, and let me know if you have a better one, is 1,000th for every inch in diameter. So I'm looking for about a 3,000th press fit, not a 4.6. Not to toot my own horn, but this is good. 3.2544. That's exactly the dimension I was looking for. See? 3.2544. This is down to the tenths of a thousandth accurate to exactly the press fit I want. So perfect. So next we're going to take this machine off of here. I have learned in the past not to cut the brackets off until you've pushed the bushings in. At least anywhere you can do that, which seems kind of stupid. I've measured, I know it's going to fit, but it's probably just me being scared from the first couple I did when I screwed something up and had the fit wrong. But as long as these are on, if I measured wrong or something happened and I have to touch it up, everything's still lined up. So we'll take this off, push some bushings in, slide a pin through. I already did that in the top. If that works, we'll come back with a zip wheel on a grinder and cut off my welds, take the whole assembly off of there, and this portion will be done. Some of you guys have asked about my machine. I'll see if I can not stand too directly in the way. It's pretty simple to take on and off. I'm just going to turn it off. I'll take my remote off so I don't smash it. Stupid as it is, I think they want like $500 for one of these. Probably more now. Wrap the cord up. Nothing like tripping over the cord when you're trying to carry the machine. And I come in here and take the bar off. It's just this little button head screw that's been turned down. They're a specialty part. I mean, you could make these, but I never seem to have time to make them, so I've just been buying them. And as usual, I do put some grease on the coupling here. First couple times on this one, it stuck so bad it was a nightmare. A little bit of grease usually okay. A little spin, it doesn't really want to pop out, so I just take a piece of key stock, slide it in the hole, little pry bar, and Usually comes right off. Shouldn't have to, but I don't know. Always seem to. And it's 2 set screws for 9/16 wrench. Of course, in this setup, they're almost impossible to get to, so it'll also be fun. Now it's loose. I gotta wiggle it off of there. Usually I have more clearance, but I actually had to grind the shoulder of my bucket just a hair here to get this in. The only other way would be to move the bearing out, but then I'd have to add another support bearing. Which is my personal bucket, so I'm okay with a little nick there. Save a lot of time. Don't forget to take your cutter out. I usually take the cutter out before I start this. Otherwise it'll catch the bearing. Have a real bad time that way. Here's a cutter I'm using. It's just a little, just a M100 AR cutter. And then we slide the bar up on either end. Put that this side. Just barely. Try not to ding it. They're way more expensive than they should be. There's a lot of machining and they're pretty precise, so I guess it makes sense. But more expensive than they should be, I just mean they're more expensive than my cheap self wants to pay for a bar. In my ideal world, I'd pay them like 20 bucks, but that's really not the case. I think my bar package was $2 grand or 2,500 bucks. Yeah, it was just a 2-inch bar and a 1.25-inch bar and some stuff that goes with it. I have made a few bars as well that I use. To start off, it was nice to get all the plates and all the bearings and all the stuff you need. Really, it does add up, so it's not a horrible deal. It just hurts when you actually have to write the check for it. But once you got it, as long as you're nice to it, it lasts a pretty good amount of time. So here are our bores. You can see that's a pretty nice final finish on it. That one's exact to 4 decimal places for diameter, and this one is 0.8 thousandths off, which is really fine for what I'm doing. So now, as I said, I'm gonna press the bushing in. So crouch down there. I got some retaining compound, which I like to use. Just kind of glues in there, make sure everything's good. I cleaned this bore out with some solvent, so it is good and clean, ready for a bushing. There isn't much room, so you don't have to put too much of this stuff in there. A little bit will do it. Then I've got my threaded rod with a big flat plate on the back. Go with bushing. Driver. And cylinder to push it. This is a hollow rim. And then we got a washer and a nut. This is how I push most of these. It's pretty versatile. I've got a bunch of different drivers which I've made for different bushing sizes. Although invariably I have to make a new one about half the time anyway. Just because I never seem to have quite the right one. I got a little hand pump pour of power. Let's see if I can get it to start nice and square. It's going in pretty easy. Should be about right. That's pretty well centered. I think that'll do for what we're doing. So now we can do the other side. I'll do it this direction. Doesn't really matter. If we go this way, I guess we'll have a better view. If any of you are still watching my video, which I hope you are. Appreciate when people watch. Leave me some comments. Sometimes you get suggestions. It might be darn near perfect, but I'm not perfect, so if you have a better way to do something, let me know. If you do these in liquid nitrogen, drop the bushing in there, let it sit for a few minutes till it comes to temp, and you can just take a glove. You need gloves, it's really, really, really cold. But you can just stuff it through by hand. It goes right in. Get it centered up, let it warm up, then it won't move again. It's really pretty cool stuff. Won't have a tank here though. Alright, so we got our bucket back together. Last step, we're going to pin our teeth on. So, I got a couple tiger teeth. I think to start off, I'm going to put tiger teeth on the outside and regulars in the middle. Should give me a little bite. They're really easy to switch around if I want to. I'm going to try this. Let me know what you think. So, a bag of pins. So the way these cat teeth work, there's a retainer and a pin that's got a little cut. It doesn't quite fit through, so what you do is take your retainer, you tuck it in the side of the tooth, and up at the adapter, you slide your adapter up on. It's on there. We're going to cross and do this all the way across. Well, that looks like a heck of a lot more of a bucket tooth than when I started. When I started, the tip of the bucket was about here. So we've added more than a foot. So, much better.